Hello, I hope you're well. So, so my name is Mohammed Rajab. So, basically, I'm a consultant at Deel. That's a global payroll platform. So, if you can hear me and see the slides, drop a quick hello in the chat. Always love seeing the map light up. So so if everyone is okay, we can start. So about today's webinar. So briefly, it will be about EOR, versus entity, and when to use it. So what you walk away with is let me just a moment. So what we're going to walk away with basically is choosing between ER and entity, match to your stage and target markets. The real cost comparison most founders get wrong. Compliance red flag to avoid when hiring a first employee abroad, and a live look at how typically Deel handles both parts, so you're not guessing, and also answers to specific questions in the live QA forum. So let me unshare this and share my screen. Just a moment. Yeah. Okay. So basically, what it means. Okay. So basically, what EOR means is employ a record. So welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. Mohammed, and today we are talking about one of the most consequential decisions you'll make as you scale globally. Should you hire through an employer record, or should you set up your own legal entity? It sounds like a complex question. It's actually a strategy question, and getting it wrong. Going entity when you should use EOR, or sticking with the EOR when you're ready for an entity, can cost you months of setup time, 6 figures in legal fees, and a lot of headaches you didn't see coming. So today we're going to cut through the noise. By the end of this session, you'll have a clear framework. You basically understand the real cost comparison, and you know exactly what questions to ask before you make the call. Just a moment, guys. I like to share something. Just a moment. Just a moment, guys. Okay. Okay, so let's proceed. Sorry for that. Okay, so as I said earlier, as I said earlier on, so you're going to cut through the noise. By the end of the session, you'll have a clear framework, and you'll understand, the real cost comparison, and you know exactly what questions to ask before you make the call. I'm doing this in partnership with Deel. If you're not familiar with Deel, is a platform that powers global hiring, payroll, and compliance in over 150 countries. They do support both parts we're talking about today, which is exactly why they are the right partner for this conversation. More on that later. Okay. So keep quick housekeeping. Keep your questions coming in the chat. I'll have them for the QA at the end. And yes, this session is being recorded. You'll get that reply link via. Let's get into it. Okay. So let me start. Okay, so let me start with the scenario most founders find themselves in. You've got product market fit, you've got the budget to hire, and you found the perfect candidate, except that they're in Nigeria or Brazil or Germany, and you have no legal presence there. So what do? You Google it, and you find two options: EOR and entity, and then you find 100 opinions about which one is better, and none of them agree. Here's the truth: neither is universally better. They're tools, and like any other tool, what matters is whether you are using the right one for the job. So let me explain what each actually is. Okay, um, an employer of record is a third-party company that legally employs your worker on your behalf in a country where you have no entity. You manage the work. They handle the legal employment, the payroll, the taxes, the benefits, and the compliance part. The worker is on their payroll, not yours, but they show up every day and do your work. Think of it like renting a legal structure. First to set up, sometimes some week, no upfront investment. You pay a monthly fee per employee, typically somewhere between $300 and $600 per person, depending on the country and provider. An entity, also called as a legal entity or subsidiary, is you're actually registering a company in that country. You become the legal employer. You own the payroll, the compliance, the HR, it's yours. And with that ownership comes power and responsibility. Setup takes anywhere from 3 to 9 months, depending on the country. The costs can range from $15,000 to $50,000 or more to basically establish, plus ongoing compliance costs. You need a local bank accounts or a registered address, potentially a local director. So on the surface, EOR sound obviously better for early hires, and often it is. But there are situations where entity is not just better; it's necessary, and we're going to talk about that. Um, okay. So, here's the framework I want you to walk away with. I call it the three gates. Before you make any decision about ER versus entity, you run through these three questions in order. Um, Gate one: how many people are you hiring in this country, and over what time frame? If you're hiring 1 to 3 people, and you don't have a concrete plan to scale beyond 5 in the next month, you are full stop. The math doesn't work for an entity at that scale. You'd be spending more on an entity setup and maintenance than you save on ER fees. The crossover point varies by country, but as a rule of thumb, once you're planning for 5 or more employees in one country over the next 12 to 18 months, it's time to run the numbers on an entity. Get two: is this a long-term strategic market or an opportunistic hire? There's a difference between we found an amazing engineer in Argentina, and South Africa is a core market for us, and we're building a team there. The first is opportunistic. AR is perfect for it. Low commitment, fast and flexible. The second is strategic. If you're planting a flag in a country, if you're building a sales team there, if you're going to be operating there for years, entity starts to make more sense. It signals permanence to your team, your clients, the local market, and it gives you more control over how you operate. Yet three: are there country-specific restrictions that force that decision? Some countries have EOR restrictions or caps. There are limits on how long a worker can be employed to an EOR before you're required to establish a local entity. Some industries have regulations that require direct employment, and some countries, frankly, are so employer-friendly for entities that the setup cost is minimal and the entity just makes more sense from day one. This is where you need local knowledge, which is where a platform like Deel becomes invaluable because they've navigated this in 150 plus countries and can tell you upfront what the rules are. So run through those three gates. If you clear all three to an entity, you'd probably be ready. If any gate pushes you to where you are, start there. You can always transition later. Okay. Next to my other slide. Okay. Now let's talk about the cost comparison. This is because this is where most founders get it wrong. The mistake I see all the time is people comparing the EOR monthly fee to zero. They think if I set up an entity, I don't pay that monthly EOR fee, so I'm saving money. That's not the right comparison. The right comparison is total cost of EOR versus total cost of entity ownership over the same period. Okay, entity costs include legal setup fees, call it let's say $15,000 to $50,000, depending on your jurisdiction. Annual accounting and compliance. It ranges from $10,000 to around $30,000 per year. Local payroll software or administration. Potential requirement for a local director or a registered agent. Your team's times managing it. This one is always underestimated. If you run those numbers for a 12-month period against your fees, say 3 employees at $500 a month each, that's 18,000 in your fees, versus potentially 30,000 to 60,000 in entity cost. EOR wins. Even though it feels more expensive on the surface, the equation flips at scale. At 10 employees, 15 employees, the entity overhead gets amortized across more people and the EOR fees compound. That's when entity becomes the economically rational choice. The lesson, model it over time, not at a single point. Okay, onto my other slide is, okay, um, okay, I want to spend a few minutes showing how this actually works in practice, because theory is useful, but seeing the tool makes it real. Deel support both parts. If you're going, your Deel is the employee of record in the countries where you hire. If you're going entity, Deel's global payroll products connects you to your entity and handles the payroll, compliance, and HR locally. What it means in practice, you don't have to switch platforms at scale. You can start with EOR for your first hire in a new country, and when you're ready to transition into a local entity, Deel supports the transition without you having to rebuild your HR stack. A few things that stand out is first, speed. EOR onboarding on Deel can happen in days, not weeks. They handle the employment contract in the local language, compliant with local law, the benefit setup, and the payroll. You fill out a form, they handle the rest. Second, visibility. One dashboard for everyone, regardless of what country they are in now or how they hired. Contractors, EOR employers, entity employees, all in one place. Third, compliance. This is the one that keeps founders up at night. Misclassification, wrong tax treatment, missing a local requirement. The penalties can be severe. Deel's compliance engine is built for this, and they update it continuously as law changes. And for those of you who are in the entity camp or heading there, Deel's entity setup support means they can help you navigate incorporation too. You don't have to go find a local firm in every market. If you want to explore Deel after today, the link is in the chat, and it will be in your follow-up email. It's my referral link so that it helps you. It helps me keep doing these sessions, which I do appreciate. A moment, let me share the link in the chat. Okay, just a moment. Okay, let me share the link first. The chat. So I had shared this earlier on. Let me share this. The chat. So okay, where is the chat? Yeah, so that is the link. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. Okay. Okay, so let me bring it home. The EOR, versus entity decision isn't a one-time choice. It's a choice you make for each country. At each stage of a growth, the same company can be running EOR in 6 markets and have entities in 2 others, and that's completely normal and rational. The 3 gates framework gives you a repeatable way to make that call. How many people over what time frame, strategic market or opportunistic hire, any country-specific constraints. Start with the EOR when you need speed and flexibility, builds toward entity when you need control, scale, and performance, and use a platform like Deel so that the transition doesn't require rebuilding your whole HR setup. That's the playbook. Now, I want to spend the rest of the time on a question, because the real value of a session like this is in the specific. Let me pull up the chat now. So feel free to ask any questions. Yeah. Any questions from your end, you can just put it in the chat. Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. I think I can see your question. So can I switch from EOR to entity later without disrupting my employees? Okay, that's a good question. Yes, yeah, and it's more common than people think. The process involves terminating the EOR employment arrangement and rehiring directly through your new entity. The key is giving your employer plenty of notice, explaining what's changing, and importantly, that the teams aren't getting worse. Deal actually has a transition pathway built in, so if you're using them for ER, they can help manage the switch to entity payroll without your team feeling the disruption. Yeah. Any other question? How do benefits work with EOR? Okay, that's a good question. Thank you, Ephraim. Okay. Okay, so how do benefits work with the R? Okay, the R provider deal in this case handles local statutory benefits automatically. Things like social insurance, pensions, contributions, mandated leave. For supplementary benefits like private health insurance, it depends on the provider and the country. Deal lets you add benefits on top of the statutory minimum, which matters a lot for hiring competitively in markets where health cover is expected. What's the risk of just paying someone as a contractor instead? Thank you, Mary Viana. Okay. So high and high, and it's called the risk is actually high, and it's called misclassification. If someone works exclusively for you, follows your schedule, uses your tools, and has no other clients, most countries will consider them an employee regardless of what your contract says. The penalties vary, but can include back taxes, fines, and in some jurisdictions, the worker gaining employee rights retroactively. EOR exists specifically to solve this. Don't try to paper over an employment relationship with a contractor agreement. So I think that's clear. Is EOR more expensive than entity? Okay, which countries are the hardest to hire? Without an entry. Okay, Brazil and China are the two most commonly cited. Brazil has extremely complex labor laws and EUR restrictions that effectively cap how long you can use one. China has restrictions on who can be an EUR provider. Germany and France have stronger worker protections that make compliance critical but don't block EUR outright. The answer is always country specific. This is exactly where these countries guides are generally useful. And the other last question is EOR always more expensive than entity uh, long term? Okay, not always. It depends on how many employees and what the entity compliance costs are in that country. In some jurisdictions, entity maintenance is cheap. In others, it's enormous. The rule of thumb I use is below 5 employees in a single country. ER almost always wins economically. Above 10, entity usually does. 5 to 10 is the gray zone where you need to actually model it. I think that's everyone. I think I've answered everyone's question. I think, okay. Thank you. How do benefits work with EOR? Okay. As I said earlier on, the EOR provider, Deal in this case, handles local statutory benefits automatically. Things like social insurance, pension contributions, maternity leave. There's something known as Deal Advance, where you can actually take your salary advance, and it's paid mid-month. For supplementary benefits like private health insurance, it depends on the provider and the country. Deal lets you add benefits on top of the statutory minimum, which matters a lot for hiring competitively in markets when health is covered. Also, Deal partners with Bolt, so you actually get a discount of at least 50% on your rides. And also the other thing is also there's the Deal immigration. So actually, Deal can help you with with issues like to do with visa, HB1 visa, and such stuff. So I think the questions are over. Thank you everyone for the opportunity, and have a great weekend. Thank you all. Okay, thank you all.